without being too broad, obviously, we did think it was in the best interest of our organization, not only the future, but right now, this season as well. We've gained a Pro Bowl player. We've gained a Pro Bowl player in an area that we had big concerns in on the inside of our defense. Let me go beyond your question. First of all, I want to tell you that I really like Micah. I appreciate the 4 years that we've had him here, and he's a great player. And so we are very appreciative of the fact that he's a great player. There's no question that I could have signed him in April. And so we all know that to have agreements, all parties have to agree. But this was by design. I did make Micah an offer. It wasn't acceptable, and I honor the fact that it wasn't done in the way that he wanted to do it through an agent. So he was made an offer. There's not an ounce of vindictiveness. There's no bad feelings on my part about the fact that we didn't come together on an agreement. The facts are, and we'll cover it, I'm sure, with many of your questions, but the facts are specifically we need to stop the run. And we haven't been able to stop the run at key times for several years. And when you have the kind of extraordinary pass rush that Michael had, then the way to mitigate that pass rush is to run at you. If the pass rush doesn't get you ahead pretty big time and you're playing even or behind, then you've really got a problem in stopping the run. And so we have felt as we embark on changing things. We have a coach that we're mighty proud of in Brian, and we're excited about the changes that we're making, not only in the coaching staff, but in the team. I think out of our 60 players that we would count as the actives and a percent of the practice squad, over 1/3 of those players are new. And so we are doing what I've said many times, that if you are the one that owns, and when you look in the mirror, you've got to change. And so that this was a very deliberate, as it played out, reflection on a key player that could bring us a lot of consideration now, and the player that we got that can help us stop the run, and a lot of consideration in the future, a lot of capital that is required to build a team. It takes many players to be tried to play in the NFL. It takes 11 on the field at the same time. It takes a minimum of 30 or 40 at minimum to have both defense and offense, not including players that are involved in our special teams. So it takes more than one. And so you do have to allocate your resources, whether it be draft picks or whether it be finances. You have to allocate those resources. There was no question in our mind that Michael could bring us a lot of resources on a trade. That has been on my mind since we hired Brian. And so there was no question. As it turns out, all the publicity about the not having a contract certainly you did your part in making sure that it was known that he was potentially available, and I appreciate that very much. And I say that a little tongue-in-cheek. I'm not really as serious about it. But I will say this, that it was important that we did get, if we could get it, the kind of interest that we got in making a trade for Micah. He was an asset that we got 4 great years out of. But when you are talking about making a contract the kind that he got and for the future, that's quite a commitment. And none of that counts about what he did those first 4 years. It all goes against what he can do for you in the future, the length of that contract and maybe more. Well, then you've got to really weigh how many players. And I'm just going to give you this. Not only do we immediately get a player, but those...
All right, you can get those comments in full on YouTube. Emory Hunt back in studio to react to what we did here. Emory, respectful to the one exiting and excited about the pieces coming back, stressing stopping the run over attacking the pass. Are we hearing spin or are we hearing good reason?
I wrote down here, Jerry no ball, because I've been saying you take your best pass rusher and you turn him into a run defender. He basically let the cat out the bag by saying Micah couldn't stop the run. Teams are just going to run at Micah Parsons. So he almost kind of shifted the entire run defense blame on Parsons when we know that is not the case because they had issues on the defensive interior, which then affects guys on the edge. Micah Parsons can disrupt things in a run game by twisting inside and just quickly blowing up, guard center guard play by how aggressive he attacks the lane. But Jerry let the cat out of the bag right there. He's like, run defense is a big issue. Mm-hmm. And he kind of said, hey, teams were taking Micah Parsons out of the game by running right at him. And so he puts it now on Green Bay. Can Green Bay stop the run? Green Bay will be able to stop the run because they have 2 good defensive tackles, which then permeates to everyone else. You're going to have these one-on-one matchups. And so if you walk down to Xavier McKinney, who's another fantastic player that they have on defense, they'll be fine. The Cowboys had issues on the defensive interior, so it wasn't particularly on Parsons. Yes, Parsons has to be better at stopping the run. That's what any guy that wants to get out there and rush the passer. But the fact that Jerry put this on wax, it screams to what was one of the reasons why he felt comfortable moving on from a guy. This ain't Reggie White. Reggie White was 6'5", 300 pounds, a pass rusher, but also a guy that stopped the run. So it was interesting to hear him say that. 2 things can be true, but I'll tell you what isn't true, or something in here obviously isn't. Said that trade has been on my mind since we hired Brian. Brian Schottenheimer was hired late in the cycle, January 24th. On August 2nd, Jerry Jones spoke to the media in a scrum and said, I'm not trading Parsons. I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. Mm-hmm. The free lies are out there. It's the summertime. No one cares. No one fact checks. We know now that he is traded. Mm-hmm. And so Jerry just put that out there. And so it happened.
I think a lot of Micah. And I wish him so much success. I don't want him to have success when he play the Cowboys as much as I do want him to have overall success. But Micah Parsons did an outstanding job for us for 4 years. And a little bit of the way Herschel Walker may have had his greatest contribution to the Cowboys, what he brought to us when he left could be a tremendous thing for our fans and the success of this team. Kenny Clark, we really knew beginning this spring that if we could pick up a top interior defensive lineman just to offset not having a pass rusher, even though it's Micah, but where we're strong is in our pass rushing depth. And we knew if we could get an interior lineman that was at least something that would improve us right there on a top interior lineman. He comes in strong for us, and he comes in accomplished for us. And so we're glad to have him. It was a prerequisite. We went down the teams, and we only picked teams that had room on their cap that could pay Micah, and we only picked teams that had top tackles, interior tackles, that we wanted to have any dialogue with at all about a trade. That was the criteria of trading. Top existing tackle that could come in here and play for us right now, this year, and offset the fact to whatever degree, more or less, that we don't have that excellence that Micah Parsons has there, but we do have the depth to come in here and do that. And then if we could get the picks that we ultimately getting, and we did have several teams that we might have had an opportunity to do something with. We did have that. And so this was no instantaneous happening this afternoon over about a 5-minute period. The other thing that I would like to say is I firmly made a commitment to Micah this spring, and paid him, and to pay him. At that time, I was battling and knew that the other alternative probably was. I had no idea of what we might be able to get. But I knew that it was very likely to be several players that we could use those resources for all the way, draft picks as well as cap space. And so that was on our mind. The minute that we saw that we were quite possibly were going to have an issue about whether or not we could do a contract or not, that gave us time, that gave us imagineering. That coupled with bringing in a new coach and bringing in a new staff, we felt it fit for us to have more players, more excellent players, if we do a good job of acquiring those players, plus have a team this year that would give us a better chance, dare I say that? But absolutely, it's not a zero that we're dealing with as far as how much better that we were trying to be, even not having Micah. I've got several other things that I could answer a question with, but I'll stop and just let you ask questions.
The only other thing, you did an amazing job of covering.
All right, back in studio, Joe Musso alongside Emory Hunt, CBS lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones joining our conversation. JJ, Jerry detailing much of the criteria that brought this deal to fruition. What can you tell us about what league circles are saying on how this came to pass?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this, and I'm going to take a tack that might be a little surprising. I understand some of what Jerry Jones is saying, okay? First of all, I do want to be clear before I launch into this, and that is that I'm not saying that the Dallas Cowboys are better off without Micah Parsons. Mm-hmm. They are not. They are a worse football team today, right now, in this hour, than they were a few hours ago, should Micah Parsons play for them in 2025. Micah Parsons is a better football player than Kenny Clark. Whoever you draft in 2026 and 2027 with the Packers' first-round picks, wherever they fall, they're not going to be on your team in 2025. So the Cowboys are a worse team. This does not help the Dallas Cowboys get back to or win an NFC championship game for the first time in more than a quarter century. What Jerry Jones is talking about, the logic that he is using, first of all, he is saying we needed help in the rush defense. There's no doubt at all about that. The Dallas Cowboys were the second worst rush defense in terms of expected points added, if you want to use the top analytical stat there, in the NFL last year. They were really, really bad. Only the Carolina Panthers were worse than the Dallas Cowboys last year. And so he says, okay, well, we just went out and drafted Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College in this draft. We sort of like our edge rushers, but we have to get better on the inside. Let's go get Kenny Clark and let's get something from Micah Parsons. That's his logic. You can disagree with it. That's the logic. Now, when you consider the money, and this is a big part. This is actually something I was just texting with an NFL source who does a lot of contracts, and a lot of contracts that we've talked about on here, who said, you do have to consider, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, paying Micah Parsons right here at 47, and maybe the number for the Dallas Cowboys wasn't going to be 47, maybe it was going to be 45, but let's say it was 47. You have to consider paying Micah Parsons 47 while you're paying Dak Prescott 60. Mm-hmm. Because when you put those two together, that is actually two of the 12 highest salaries in NFL history. Obviously, it's two of the highest today in NFL history. It is really hard to build a competitive team if that is what you have on your ledger. Now, we can go back and we can say the Dallas Cowboys didn't have to be here. They could have paid Dak Prescott a year before they paid him and not waited. They could have paid CeeDee Lamb a year before they paid him and not waited. They could have paid Micah Parsons last year and not waited. All of that is true. But the fact is we were where we are today, and that is what Jerry Jones is saying. So I understand he's 80 plus, and I understand folks want to say that he's a rambling old man. I'm seeing it all over. I just want to at least be generous and charitable enough to expound slightly on what he is saying, to say that in that sort of vacuum, that is the sense that he is attempting to make with this.
The logic does track the reason he puts behind it, the importance of defending the run over defending the pass. We can follow all of those things. I do want to follow up on one thing that you said there. I know no CeeDee Lamb contract in Green Bay right now, the youngest roster in the NFL, allows them to do something like this, but 55 per year committed to their quarterback as well. How did we land on 47? Anything from that league source indicate on how we jumped from 41 to 47?
So because of what the Green Bay Packers were going to have to give up, when you give up such a huge amount, and this is not something the Green Bay Packers do, right? It's one of the storied franchises. They don't send away 2 first-round picks, typically. They love drafting their own. And in the past, they have made big splashes in free agency, right? You go back to the start of free agency and Reggie White. You go back more than 10 years ago and Julius Peppers. But they don't send top-tier draft picks and then pay top of market. So the Green Bay Packers are doing something they never do. If you get a Micah Parsons, what you have to do is you are essentially buying future years as well. And so they probably would have wanted to get him under contract for 5 or 6 years. They got him under contract for 4. You have to, when you trade for him, the Dallas Cowboys can agree to this, but you have to make sure that you can sign him, right? And so let's go ahead and sign him now. And at 47, that makes sure that he is going to be happy with his contract, not just this year and sign, but next year and hopefully in year 3. And we have not seen the exact particulars of this deal, but one can imagine that the Packers cannot extricate themselves from this deal in the first 2 years. It would be financially painful to do so before the 3rd year, and you probably can at some point ahead of that 4th year if you so choose, while Micah Parsons, still at 30 years old as a pass rusher, can still get another bite at that apple, like we just saw Myles Garrett, like we just saw TJ Watt. So that is the logic. That's how that took place, with the Green Bay Packers going above and beyond what the market probably dictated that they should.
Emory, I see the stylings of Jonathan Jones inspiring much in you as you're listening to him work through those numbers. What have you come to understand of this after hearing some of Jerry's comments?
You know what's interesting? He brought up we have depth and we have a plan in place. They're trying to get a lot of guys to do what one Micah Parsons did for less of the price. And when I go back and look at my draft grades on some of the guys they have, Ezraku was my number 10 edge rusher. James Houston is the guy that he's just signed and he made a team, was my number 4 pass rusher outside linebacker coming out of Jackson State. And also Nealon, number 5, 4-3 defensive end. Sam Williams was number 5 edge rusher. So they have talent. And Jay Toye, we talked about earlier, was my number 4 nose tackle in this year's draft class. So they were able to draft really good talent. Will McClay is the guy that Rand Carthon brought up as the architect of how they go about their draft. Because one thing you can say about this Cowboys team, they don't lack talent. So Jerry is right and say, hey, we got a lot of depth at the position, but not one of these guys are Micah Parsons. So you're hoping, Kenny Clark along with Jay Toye, and if Mozzie Smith can step up and be what he was supposed to be as a first-round pick, then the rotation of those guys on the edge gives you some confidence that, hey, we can at least get off the field at some point in time during the ball game.
You know what they say about depth? It's going to be tested. It will be tested this season.
Literally.
And in kind here, our first game of the season a week away will include those Dallas Cowboys against the class of the league right now in the Philadelphia Eagles. Jonathan Jones, I want to go back to some of what Jerry said here as well, because suggesting last spring is when he started to mull over the idea of Micah Parsons no longer being a Dallas Cowboy and what it would take for him to no longer be. Much of what he showed or did not show in these negotiations, the posturing between two sides, was that this was never on the table. What have you heard about those two conflicting stories, the timeline that he presented and the timeline that we've now been told?
So again, in talking with NFL sources, what everyone is sort of really in agreement with is if we wound up at this point, first of all, you should have been able, because the Dallas Cowboys, because Jerry Jones has more information on this entire ordeal available to him than anyone else on earth, you should know that we could end up at this point. And if you can place a percentage on that, then you should do this before the draft. You should, because right now what he's saying is we are a better team today. We have the opportunity to be better today because of this trade, because of look at the assets we just got from Micah Parsons. That is untrue. They may eventually be better, right? They could go out there and absolutely get first ballot Hall of Famers with these draft picks. And Kenny Clark, who had a down year last year, can turn things around. And the 2026, 2027 Dallas Cowboys can go win the Super Bowl with this. I'm not ruling that out. They're not a better team today. But if you had done this in March or before the last weekend of April, when the draft was, you could have helped the 2025 Dallas Cowboys. You could have Kenny Clark, and you could have a rookie who was a first rounder, who the Green Bay Packers otherwise would have drafted, right? But you didn't, and you waited, and you thought that you had a handshake agreement with Micah Parsons. And one quick thing, I know a lot of people are talking about how Jerry Jones wanted to negotiate with Micah Parsons and that he was going against the CBA. I've asked a bunch of people. I've scoured the CBA myself. He didn't actually violate the CBA, and if he did violate the CBA, there would have been grievances about this, and we all could have pointed to the exact paragraph in the subsection where he did. He did not. He went to Micah Parsons. He thought that he had a deal, and that's when Micah said, hold on, I have an agent. Talk with my agent. And Jerry didn't want to do that, and he did not want to work with Micah Parsons' agent because he believed, right or wrong, and I wasn't a part of these conversations, but he believed that he had a deal with Micah Parsons. And so from that point, that's where stubbornness takes over. You think that you have a deal at $40 million in average annual value, and Micah Parsons said, I just want to bring the professional in on this. He said, nope, not doing that. And that's where we end up at this point. Jerry says he's not being vindictive. He wants the best for Micah, minus that one time that they're going to play this upcoming season. But ultimately, if you had removed emotion from this, it is hard for me to imagine that Micah Parsons is not still a Dallas Cowboy. If you had removed emotion from this with Jerry Jones, Micah Parsons is the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, and he's suiting up against the Philadelphia Eagles for the Dallas Cowboys next week.
Emotion, and I will say emotion driven by ego, oftentimes in these sorts of situations. I offer the quote, it's in the best interest, not just in the future, but right now for the Dallas Cowboys. It can be truth and a lie all in one sentence. Jonathan Jones, to your point, I think we see through some of that, but you can see the thought process moving forward to the future. Enough on the numbers. Let's talk a little ball in Green Bay. A closing thought here from Jonathan Jones. What does this do for the clock? I know it speeds up the clock for opposing quarterbacks, but you now have a quarterback in place, a star edge rusher in place, and you can't sell hope. Now is the time to show execution and sell tickets to a championship caliber ball club. What does this do to the clock in Green Bay?
Well, I can tell you the reaction I've gotten from the opponents of the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East. No one's shedding a tear that he's gone. They're very happy that he is gone. This is a great day for the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders, the New York Giants. This is not such a good day for the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions, right? They got their guy in this pass rusher, and this is something that the Green Bay Packers over the last couple of decades, they go and they get the Reggie Whites and they get the Julius Peppers, and then they go out and they get Micah Parsons. And so this does add. Now, I want to be clear about this. What we just talked about with the Dallas Cowboys, what Jerry Jones discussed about the sort of asset allocation, resource allocation that you have if you pay a quarterback like Dak Prescott $60 million and you pay a pass rusher, Micah Parsons, $47 million, is that it leaves you with such small margin for error. Well, the Green Bay Packers are paying their quarterback, Jordan Love, $55 million per year. And so they don't have a great deal of margin for error. When it comes to the trade deadline, right, in October, if they've dealt with some unfortunate injuries this upcoming season, they're not going to have the cap space to do anything to stay within contention like we see so many playoff contending teams do year in, year out. So you better be sure. I will just say this, though. You better be sure, well, there's some surefire things in the NFL, and Micah Parsons is right up there as one of the most surefire things that the NFL has.
Known commodity. For Dallas, it's future picks. Jonathan Jones, Emory Hunt, appreciation as always for the insight. Thank you, fellas. Here's what we know about that commodity. Heck of a football player, heck of a guy, and now a Green Bay Packer. 52 and a half in his first 4 seasons. Rarefied air with legends only.